Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back. Thanks for joining me. Today is going to be a Bible review on the Message translation by Eugene Peterson. This came out originally in 1993. The edition I have is from 2002. And I actually want to tell you the story about how I acquired this Bible. I live in apartments here in my local town. I live in these apartments and we have a laundry room. And it's like a community laundry room, obviously. So we have this area in the laundry room where people will give away things that they don't want. So like you might go in there and you might find some like canned goods, maybe some old clothes. I've seen a TV in there once before. So I go into the laundry room one day. Lo and behold, I see this sitting with some other random books. Knowing what little knowledge that I had prior about the Message translation, I went ahead and grabbed this as fast as I could. Not because I want to use it, but because to save anyone else from getting their hands on it. There is some serious errors with this translation. And you can actually find interviews online of Eugene Peterson being interviewed, and he talks about it. And he talks about the motivation. He says that when he was translating, he wasn't trying to really explain things in the text. He wasn't trying to, exegete the text. Basically, he wasn't faithful to interpret or translate rightly. Anyway, he said what he was trying to do was just put it in contemporary language. Language that he's a minister, so he wanted his congregation to be able to grasp what it is that they were reading in the Bible, or whatever it is that he was preaching. So he just wanted... like I said, just modern language, contemporary English. That's what it is. Actually, you can see right here, it says the Bible in contemporary language. Just wanted to look at a couple scriptures. I've actually picked out a couple, and I want to compare them to like the ESV. I use the ESV and the NIV. Pretty regularly, but wanted to just compare a couple verses. Okay, so Psalm 91 verses 7 and 8. This is pretty famous psalm about God's protection and stuff. It says, verse 7, His huge outstretched arms protect you. Under them you're perfectly safe. His arms fend off all harm. Now, what you may have missed something, or something may have sounded off to you, because in the ESV, and this is very similar in other translations, like King James, New King James, NIV, it says, He will cover you with His pinions, and under His wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. That word, pinions, basically is like Hebrew for like the tassels or the fringes of the end of a garment. We kind of always think like, eagle's wings. I always thought that. Until studying this recently, I found out that was wrong. So what it's actually saying is, you remember the lady who, she had the issue of blood? And she just kept telling herself, if I could just touch just the edge of his garment, just the edge of his cloak, that'll be enough and I'll be healed. The fringes, what that was just the tassels of the end of like a prayer shawl. And there's a whole lot of symbolism and stuff behind it. But she was just basically saying that, look, if I could just touch just the very minimal, just the edge of his cloak, that's more than enough to completely heal me. And that's kind of what it's saying over here. It's the same word. You know, as if God had this big prayer shawl, this, you know, in our protection, we are completely protected. If we are just under just the pinions, just the wings, just the very edge of God's cloak, just the very outer edge, just right there, that's more than enough to be completely protected. So anyway, he says his outstretched arms. Obviously, the nuance is completely lost. And there's just so much that is lost. Down in verse 8, it says, even though others succumb all around, drop like flies, left and right, no harm will even graze you. It says, in the ESV, 1,000 fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, and it will not come near you. He just says, you will see others, you know, just others, succumb. Over here it says 1,000 will drop over here, 10,000. I mean, you can feel the emphasis, you know, from the original rendering. You know, it gets me really worked up to just see someone just handle the Word of God like this. So it's really upsetting. So Psalm 139, let's see, verse 7 and 8, it says, is there any place I can go to avoid your spirit, to be out of your sight? If I climb to the sky, you're there. If I go underground, you're there. In the ESV, it says, where shall I go from your spirit, or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. I think the King James and New King James says, even if I make my bed in hell, you are there. And obviously that is from the Hebrew word Sheol, which means the grave, or like the underworld, the abode of the disembodied dead. But he just translates it as, if I go underground, like an underground bunker or something. You know, I see what he's saying. You know, wherever he goes, you know, God is everywhere. But there's so much more emphasis when you just stick to the original text. I mean, it's insane. Here's a good one. This is in Proverbs Chapter 1. It says, dear friend, if bad companions tempt you, don't go along with them. If they say, let's go out and raise some hell, let's beat up some old man, mug some old woman, let's pick them clean, get them ready for their funerals, we'll load up on top quality loot. I have to stop there. Over here it says, in the ESV, my son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without reason. Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive and whole, like those who go down to the pit. He takes the word Sheol, which in King James they translate it as hell. He keeps the word hell, even though it's Sheol, and then completely takes it out of context and inserts a whole different phrase altogether. Remember over here it says, like Sheol, the pit, the abode of the disembodied dead. Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive and whole, like those who go down to the pit. And this is what Peterson does. Let's go out and raise some hell. Let's beat up some old man and mug some old women. Completely lost. Completely void of anything meaningful. And this is what we're dealing with. This isn't even a translation. This is actually to advertise it as, like, this would be false advertisement. the Bible in big bold letters. Sorry that it's not focused in very well in contemporary language. This is complete false advertisement. I mean, if you're going to market... so I feel like there's some deception at play here, because he's acting like he, you know, translated this word and made it palatable. Really is what he did. Made it, you know, new translation for modern ears. And he just, wow, talk about mishandling the scriptures. And here's the thing, I'm not saying that, you know, he has wrong motives. Could be questionable. But I'm just saying, you just can't handle the Word of God like that. You just can't take the scriptures into your own hands and play around with the Word of God like that and just change it around, change it up and stuff. I mean, that's insane. You know, you're causing people to lose so much that God has packed in here. You know, let's look over here. Here, let's go to the New Testament over in Luke chapter 16. I'm not even going to pull it up in the ESV because it's about the rich man and Lazarus. Okay, Jesus tells this parable about the rich man and Lazarus. And so this is what Peterson says. Now remember that Jesus is talking to some Pharisees. He's addressing them. And right before this, you know, he calls them out on some stuff. But anyway, he tells them this parable. And others are around. He says, there was once a rich man, expensively dressed in the latest fashions, wasting his days in conspicuous consumption. A poor man, Lazarus, covered with sores, had been dumped on his doorstep. Okay, so right off the bat, the rich man. It says there was this, if you read any other version, it'll say he was dressed in purple and fine linen, which wouldn't really, most people look past that. Peterson says, here's a rich man expensively dressed in the latest fashions. Here's the thing. Jesus is talking to Pharisees, to teachers of the law, to priests. And if you go to Leviticus, if you look at the section on priestly garments, what God ordained them to wear, they were to wear purple and fine linen. Well, Jesus just is talking to a bunch of Pharisees, priests, and says, look, you know, there's this rich guy who just happened to be dressed in all the same things that you guys are dressed in. Purple and fine linen. I personally believe that he's trying to, he's using them as an illustration, using one of their own as an illustration in this parable. Just by the words purple and fine linen. Because that's what priests wore. That's what God ordered them to wear. You can look it up in the Old Testament. Eugene Peterson completely drops that and just says he was expensively dressed in the latest fashions. Now, the priest, you know, probably looked fashionable. But if you would not study that and look into that, you would never know. If I was just to read this, I would have no clue that Jesus more than likely was referring to a priest himself or a Pharisee. That's just completely law. Last one. There's so much that we could go through. Last one. The spiritual gifts in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. I'm just going to name some of the gifts. I don't even want to read the section. I just want to read some of the gifts. Wise counsel, clear understanding, simple trust, faith, healing the sick, miraculous acts, proclamation, distinguishing between spirits, tongues, and interpretation of tongues. The only thing that he retained that was original was tongues and interpretation of tongues. I mean, some of us, who already have a knowledge of this would be able to decipher, okay, wise counsel, a word of wisdom, right? Proclamation, the gift of preaching or teaching, simple trust, obviously, faith. But still, the common person would just be like, he's trying to simplify it so much that you're losing some of these words that just have so much meaning packed in them. And it's just a shame to see someone, and like I said, he may not have ill intent, but I think it's questionable. I know that when he first started releasing, back in '93, he started releasing portions of the Message Bible. You could buy the book of Psalms in the Message translation. And you could buy, he would slowly release them over time. Probably made a lot of money at it. Who knows? Weird that he did that. But now this one guy is coming out with the Passion translation. One man undergoing the translation of the entire Bible, like another one man did in the past, and he is releasing it in increments as well. The Psalms, the prophets, you could buy a book here, a book there, and as he slowly releases them toward the end, then he's going to start doing bundles. Like you could buy, the Psalms, Proverbs, and Job all together for, it's just, and like I said, there may really be no ill intent, but just the simple fact that you're so loosely handling the Word of God in this way is just, it's a shame. God says that it's a shame to handle His Word that way when He says for us to rightly divide the word of truth. Unashamed. There's nothing to be ashamed of if we're doing our job and doing the work at exegesis and expository stuff. There's nothing to be ashamed. That's what the text says. But when you handle it so loosely, God says that you ought to be ashamed. And it's just, I do not recommend this to anyone. If you find one, like I found one, just pick it up and throw it away. Use it for target practice. I'm going to hang on to this one just as a, I really don't know why. I probably should do something with it. But anyway, like I said, do not buy this. The NIV, if you want something that's in contemporary language, contemporary English, but still maintains the, the original intent of the authors and stuff, the NIV is the one that I use. It's dynamic equivalence. I also read the ESV because I want the literal stuff too. So I want to see the nuance and stuff, but at the same time, I want to see some things in the ESV or the NIV explained. And anyway, if anything, if you're going to get any kind of Bible like a paraphrase or anything like that, I wouldn't get a paraphrase, and I surely wouldn't get this. The NIV is what I would suggest. It's as loose as you can get, and yet still there's a team of scholars who, with integrity, they underwent all this review. They made sure that what they were putting out, giving out to the public, was the Word of God. In as contemporary language as they could get, and yet still be faithful to the text. So the Message Bible gets a 0 out of 5 stars from me. Thanks for joining. God bless.